USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Sydney Sweeney. I'm not here to tell you to buy American Eagle jeans. And I definitely won't say that they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn. Or that they make your butt look amazing. Why would I need to do that? But if you said that you want to buy the jeans, I'm not going to stop you. But just so we're clear, this is not me telling you to buy American Eagle jeans.
Sydney Sweeney, Hasbro jeans.
You see what I did there, right?
Verizon Small Business Days are here, August 11th through 17th. Book your appointment today to get special deals like a free 5G phone. Still want more? Get a free tech check while you're here. Call 1-800-483-4428 or visit verizon.com/smallbusiness. We got you covered. Verizon Business. Available for select 5G phones. New line device payment agreement and select data plan required. Credit applied to account over agreement term up to 36 months. Terms apply. Offer ends 8/17/2025.
Welcome to Horror Bytes on Safe Room, the show where we discuss the smallest scares and teenier terrors available to play on your PC. Each week we pick one or two bite-sized horror games and have a suitably short and sweet chat about them. I'm Neil Bolt, and cosplaying True Evil with me this week is my co-host Jay Krieger. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing well, man. Trying to decipher between the tenants and the monsters this week.
Many of these games are free to play, but if you play them and enjoy them, please help the developers out by donating, wishlisting their future projects, or just spreading the word, because it all helps build the next generation of horror game developers. And of course, if you do like the sound of what we've played, the show notes do include a link to the game we've discussed. And this week, Jay and I practice our best. Well, it wasn't like that when you moved in, and I just thought I'd let you know it's now an extra $500 a month. I have a bit of a gambling problem, and frankly, you're not paying me enough to solve it. As we head into the landlord horrors of Doppelpartment. So take it away, Jay.
Yeah, this week for Doppelpartment, this is going to be another entry from developer A.V. Dassault between Grotesque, which was a anthology-style horror game, and this time it's one narrative, but it's one that is more encompassing, and it's generally a larger experience. That being that Doppelpartment is a 2D side-scroller in which the player is put into the very luxurious shoes of an apartment complex manager, tasked with caring for the property, collecting rent, and checking up on their tenants. But their daily routine is interrupted when a soldier appears one evening and informs them that some of the tenants have been replaced by doppelgangers. So now it's up to the player to use the information that they can discern from conversations with those tenants and begin to pick out who in the building is who they say they are and who there are some that, there's a bit more to them than meets the eye. So this game was made with RPG Maker, MZ. And, once again, this was a game that was pretty impressive even before I started it, just because as I was looking through it, A.V. Dassault is a developer that, juggles multiple sort of hats at a time. Like notably, they do all the pixel art, soundtrack, the writing, it's all them. And so that was the same case with the previous title. And just, for somebody like me that can't even fathom making a game, the notion that there's people out there just doing everything for their game, and especially when it ends up being as strong of a work as a Doppelpartment is just makes it quite impressive. But I guess from the outset, we've covered games that deal with doppelgangers before and whatnot, but this is a lot more in-depth in terms of having that sort of RPG aspect to it, where, the game begins with the player going to each of the tenants, of the 13 tenants, who each have their own personality, their own portraits, and you basically collect rent, but you also have conversations with them and get to learn little tidbits about them, which early on might seem like, okay, like how is this all going to be relevant later on? But then, as I said, once you learn like, oh, you have to be able to uncover who the doppelganger is, then that information becomes vital in how you interact with those people and what you kind of pick up on in the course of conversations with them. So, for instance, one of the characters will reveal like, oh, they have children. Okay, I'm going to keep that in mind in the back of my head. One person is very introverted, so I'm going to keep their persona sort of in the back of my mind if I have to return here. And so it's one of those things where early on, the sort of like nuances of those interactions and the various dialogue options with characters might not always seem like it's going to be that important. But at the end of the day, you're going to be returning. I think there's 3 full days of going through conversations with people. And, at the end of each day, you have to report somebody to the soldier to take away because you think that they're a doppelganger. But there's the chance that you're going to like select someone. And then, that gets thrown in your face basically. And you're told to like, okay, maybe even derive a little bit more from those conversations, because if not, you're going to end up taking innocent lives. And I just was really impressed, I think, with the progression overall of this and those interviews and whatnot. And we could talk a little bit more about like the body horror stuff here, which I really like. But how did you find this one?
Yeah, again, I think it was an interesting sort of concept, and it's a few things sort of mixed together that I could think of. That whole sort of papers, please thing that has been done here and there. I think there's a game recently, that zombie checking game, whatever it is, where you basically get people for a checkpoint and have to see if they're like infected or whatever. Like little things like that. I can see why that would be interesting in a horror sort of sense. The idea of like, well, you don't know if you're going to be choosing the right person or not, and given like the idea of doppelgangers, body snatchers, anything like that, the paranoia is there straight away. So that ties into it as well. Where it's like, are you condemning someone who's innocent effectively to some terrible fate, or are you doing a greater good? Or is any of it true, sort of thing? And I think one of the most interesting ways this game sort of goes about it is that art style, this the MS Paint style, the visuals, which like I said, when we talk about being able to do like anything in the sort of idea of creating a game, like even that to me is like arduous, using MS Paint. So to create such varied characters who are just like off kilter from the start is quite something. And because they all look slightly off to begin with, it really kind of puts you in that mindset of like, okay, what's their deal? And that's the red herring that you're given. It's like they're all going to be a bit strange or look a bit weird, and then they're going to subvert what you think they look like by being nice or calm or nervous, what you don't expect them to be. And as you said, it's paying attention to those little traits and tics that they have. And I like that even then you can't be entirely sure. Like I think that's the sign of a good, sort of doing a doppelganger style story, is that you want to have that sort of idea of paranoia about what's going on. Yeah, and being a building manager / landlord is an interest. I think for this kind of game, because it's that kind of protagonist for a game about choosing people's fates, actually, like that is feels a bit on the nose in some ways, but in a good way. So this was a really neatly done concept. I'm always a sucker for doppelganger, body snatcher style stuff, so this has done it quite well.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about the overall progression of this was that when that soldier comes back the next day, they introduced a tidbit about the world of what's going on outside of the apartment and how that ends up affecting people inside. So I mentioned the body horror component, and so it's a certain point, like everyone is being exposed to something in the city that is changing their appearance, right? Was just supposed to make the doppelgangers be revealed, but in actuality it's affecting everybody. So when you go back and you're interacting with people, everybody starts to begin to look like a monster, which is really nice touch, I think, because it would be, how easy and how sort of lame would it be if inevitably you find somebody and okay, he's got a third arm. I think I'm just going to blast him in the face. It's clearly a doppelganger. But the fact that everybody slowly begins to degrade and change and look different in some pretty grotesque ways, I think adds another layer of complexity that puts just as much importance on, again, those like little seemingly minute details that come out in conversations that ultimately, you do have to kind of keep this running checklist in your head of, what was that conversation like? How was their disposition to me on an initial approach? Has that changed drastically or changed slightly? So like those little things, I think, do a great job of just like making this more in depth than just like pick the freak out of the crowd. And I'd like that early on, the initial interaction is based on just rent and before the outbreak happens or before that information is given to you. Because then later on, when you have to make some tough decisions towards the end of the game, it's interesting to see how that would influence the player and whatnot, or if that influences their decision making at all. So yeah, and again, like the whole presentation of this, I was really impressed with. The pixel art's great. The body horror stuff I thought was great as well. And yeah, just ultimately, this was also, I suppose, also like just a longer experience I found, which again speaks to kind of just a great central idea for a game and seeing it being stretched out more than we would generally see with a horror bite, right? This wasn't just a few minutes. I don't know about you, but I spent nearly an hour with this.
I think it was about an hour and a half.
And there's multiple endings. You get a ranking based on, how many doppelgangers you picked correctly, how many innocents you had killed by mistake. And so, yeah, I think it's a game that I got a lot of mileage out of based on that sort of like general theme and sort of like conceit to this game. So I thought that was quite impressive and doesn't outstay its welcome. It's got some cool surreal touches to the storytelling. So yeah, this was another great entry, I think, from a developer that I'm going to continue to keep my eye on because so far it's been nothing but gems.
Yeah, great ambition as well. I think in just sort of mixing and matching different pieces together and doing it in a very handcrafted fashion as well, which is, I mean, games are handcrafted, but it's just like the art style and stuff, and just taking the time to make this very intimate is the best way to put it. Sort of art, doodlings, if you will, that have character and flavor to them. So yeah, well done in that regard. And that is all we have for this week. Thank you again, Jay, for talking about these short horror games with me. And if you, the listener, have a short horror game, a demo, a game jam entry, or proof of concept that you think we should be highlighting, you can email us at saferoompod@gmail.com, and Jay will tell you where else.
You can also find us over at Blue Sky at SafeRoomPod.
Many thanks, and we will be back with more small-scale horror next week.